Hello, Social Nines. This lesson today will be somewhat of a repeat of what we did the other day in class, but nonetheless, I'm just going to kind of skip through it rather quickly to get you to your first assignment, which would be the scavenger hunt. All right, so this is the chapter 1 lesson, Canadian political system, etc. I'm going to skip through this. I never do this scenario. It's basically recreate your own civilization, blah, 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 blah. So anyways, we're going to look at elections in Canada, the structure of government, lawmaking, media and lobby groups, and the chapter task. We'll get through the elections in Canada today. All right, we went over this the other day, what a political party was. A group of people who have similar ideas about how government should respond to issues facing society, and they try to put forth candidates in elections and seek to ultimately form a government. Okay, that's what a party is. That's the difference between a party and a lobby group. Lobby groups do not try to put forth candidates to form a government, win an election, etc. So when I think of political parties, I think of the Conservative Party, I think of the Liberal Party, I think of the New Democratic Party, I think of the Green Party, Bloc Québécois Party in the United States. I think of the Democrat Party and the Republican Party. All right, the various political leaders in our country. The NDP leader is Jagmeet Singh. The Liberal leader is Justin Trudeau. The Green Party's new leader is Annamie Paul. The Conservative leader is Aaron O'Toole. And the Bloc Québécois is Yves-Francois Blanchet. All right. So Canada ultimately is divided into 338 electoral districts, constituencies, ridings. They are approximately created depending on population. Roughly around 100,000 people live in every riding. There are a number of exceptions. For example, Nunavut and Northwest Territories and Yukon have much fewer than 100,000 people, but each of those territories do have a seat. Some places, like in the middle of Toronto, Toronto would be in this area here, have much more than 100,000 people in a constituency. But nonetheless, they try to divide it based on population. All right, each riding or constituency elects one person to represent them in Parliament, and that person is known as the MP, the Member of Parliament. To become elected from a riding, a candidate must win the most votes. They don't have to have more than 50% of the votes. They just have to have one more vote than anybody else in the contest. Okay, so you can basically win by one vote, 10,000 votes, etc. Our MP, our member of parliament, his name is Martin Shields. You might have remembered he came to our school last year. He represents the riding of Bow River. He has one hunt of the 338. All right, a couple pictures here. There's a picture of the Parliament, the House of Commons. Now, little trivia question: the House of Commons and the Parliament Hill, this whole building is getting renovated right now. So, for the next number of years, the House of Commons and Senate and many of the offices are located in another location in Ottawa. This here is the Prime Minister. He's speaking to the country. He sits in the center of the front row. Anyways, the people that are around him are his cabinet ministers, and then the people that are behind are called backbenchers. All right. I don't like this slide. I'm going to skip it. All right. We talked about the difference between a majority and minority government. When of those 338 candidates, your party wins more than half of them, okay, you become a majority government. It's very important to have a majority government. You can get your laws passed quite easily. Um, it's a much more stable government, etc. However, if the largest party in parliament is or has only or fewer than 50% of the seats in the House of Commons, they can form what is known as a minority government. Um, the problem with the minority government is that the combined MPs from the other parties outvote them. And so, in many ways, it's more unstable than the majority government. Currently, our prime minister and his government is a minority government. His first mandate as prime minister a number of years ago was a majority government. Okay, so we talk about advantages of a majority government. There's stability. You can get things done a little bit more quickly, etc. Whereas the disadvantages of a minority government is unstable. Maybe one advantage of a minority government is that the government in power has to listen to the minorities. However, big problem with that is that sometimes that the government has to play along with one party at expense of another. So, for example, our present government, led by Prime Minister Trudeau, is shifting a little bit to the left because they have to cater to the demands of the New Democrats, hoping to avoid a vote of non-confidence, which means that if you get outvoted on any kind of money bill in Parliament, you have to resign and have to call an election. Here's just a lookup of the Alberta provincial government. Uh, all right. One of the issues about our Canadian political system is the disproportionate statistics between the amount of seats that a party will win and the amount of votes in percentages that they received. So, for example, in 2011, the Conservatives received about 60% of the seats. However, only gained about 40% of the votes. And you see that time and time again. And the reason why that can happen is because parties can win a number of close votes, and it has this winner take all type of mentality. So if you win by one vote or 10,000 votes, you still win that seat. It's a winner take all. It's called first past the post. Okay. And so what happens is that you get these disproportionate majorities. Justin Trudeau, or Prime Minister Trudeau, in the 2015 election, won a majority of the seats. However, he, I think, got about 40% of the popular vote. And as a matter of fact, in this latest election, the Conservatives actually outnumbered as far as the vote totals of the Liberals, yet the Liberals won not a majority, but rather handily against the Conservatives. And so I kind of showed it using this scenario here where the Flames and the Leafs play in a playoff series. The Leafs win game one. The Flames handily win game two. The Leafs win game three. The Flames win game four. And then the Leafs win the deciding game five. And so if you were just tabulating goals, the Flames actually outscored the Leafs 7 to, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7-5. Yet the Flames, or sorry, the Leafs win the series. And it's the same thinking here with first past the post. You win the most seats, you form the government. It's not necessarily if you get the most votes. All right. The structure of our government, the so-called authority, the head of everything, the foundation of in which our country is placed upon is our Constitution. It is the law that describes governance in Canada. It sets out the role of the Governor General and the different roles of the three branches of government. It describes how the three branches of government work together to exercise the decision-making authority of government. The Constitution also sets out other important institutions in Canada, such as the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the amending formula. This here is a slide that shows the stepping stones to sovereignty of our modern Constitution. So in 1867, the BNA Act is passed, creating Canada. Once again, the BNA Act gave us control over our internal affairs, but not our external affairs. 1927, so a number of years had passed, looks like about 50, 60 years had passed. There had been 10 unsuccessful attempts between the federal government and provincial governments to decide on a so-called amending the Constitution formula. This meant that every time that Canada had to, wanted to amend the Constitution, it had to go through Britain. By 1931, Canada Britain passes the Statute of Westminster. Canada now has legal independence to amend its own constitution and to have control of its foreign affairs. 1981, so another 50 years had passed, agreement between the federal and provincial governments on the amending formula. So now they finally figured it out, how they could amend the formula without having to go through Britain. The Canadian Constitution can be now brought home. Finally, in 1982, Queen Elizabeth II proclaims the Constitution Act of 82, which is now a revision of the BNA Act of 1867. It is part of the Canada Act of 82, which now includes the new Charter of Rights and Freedoms section that we'll cover in chapters 3 and 4. All right. So now we skip ahead here. We talked briefly the other day about levels of government. Chapter 1 isn't so much about levels of government, it's more about the branches of government. So when we think of levels, we think of the federal government and its responsibilities, as you can see here, paid for through taxes, loans, fees. We have the provincial government, once again, responsibilities, and then you have your local government. Um, but we are focusing primarily on the federal government and its three branches. But once again, there you go. So let's look at the three branches. Once again, the overarching document that controls our country is our Constitution. Our head of state is the monarch. The monarch is Queen Elizabeth II. That person is represented in Canada by the Governor General. Britain's Queen or King is the formal head of state in Canada, but does not play an active role in Canada's government. The Governor General represents our monarch in Canada and is part of both the executive and legislative branches of government. So that person is our head of state. In many ways, that head of state is ceremonial. It is tied within the Constitution. That is why we have what is known as a constitutional monarch. We have three branches. The thing about branches is that it tries to separate power from one entity to another. It keeps our country from becoming a dictatorship, at least in theory. All right, so you have the executive branch. They're the ones that carry out the laws. They can propose the laws because as far as Canada is concerned, the executive branch or people within the executive branch are also part of the legislative branch. We'll get into that in a moment. They put laws into action, so they enforce the laws, and they run the day-to-day business of government. So the prime minister has various people that work under him in his cabinet. In the cabinet, they have various people that work within that infrastructure, the so-called civil service, and the civil service runs the day-to-day operations of our country. So that's the executive branch. You got the monarch, you got the governor general, you got the prime minister, you got the cabinet, and you have the civil servants. The second branch is the lawmaking branch, the legislative branch. They make the laws. They represent the interests and rights of Canada's regions. When we think of the legislative branch, we think of the two houses, the House of Commons, which is elected, 338 of them. And then we think of the appointed Senate, 105 of them. Okay. The kicker about this is that the prime minister and his cabinet, even though they're part of the executive branch, which carries out laws, and proposes them, they're also members of the legislative branch. So, in theory and in practicality, they are very powerful people. So, there isn't a complete separation of power like you would see in the United States. The third branch, they interpret the laws. They're the judges. So when a law is passed through the House of Commons and Senate and signed into law by the executive branch, that now the judicial branch interprets the law to see if it's constitutional, how to interpret it, etc. Okay, the people that are selected to the Supreme Court are chosen by the Prime Minister on a, or sorry, etc. So, anyways, so that separation. All right. So, once again, this is just restating what I just said. The executive proposes ideas for laws, carries them out. They so called enforce them. Prime Minister, Cabinet, Legislative, the House of Commons, and the Judicial, or sorry, House of Commons and the Senate. And then the Judicial is the third branch. They're the ones that interpret the laws. So let's look at this in a little bit more specific nature. The executive branch includes all the governor general, prime minister, cabinet, and the PM and cabinet and the civil service run the day-to-day business of government. The head of state, of course, is the queen, but the queen's representative is the governor general. This person represents the queen. Currently, her name is Julie Payette. Ensures Canada has a prime minister and government with the confidence of parliament. What happens from time to time is the prime minister loses the confidence of parliament through a vote of non-confidence. If that happens, the prime minister has to go to the governor general and declare that uh, parliament must be dissolved. Couple options can occur. One, the governor general can call upon someone else to form a government, or they can call an election, which is usually the case. When a bill passes through Parliament, um, it is finally signed by the Governor General and becomes a law. So you have the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is the head of Canada's government, must be the leader of the political party that is the largest party in the House of Commons, and must be an MP, a member of Parliament. Justin Trudeau is an MP from Quebec, from Montreal, a place called, I believe, Papineau. Stephen Harper was an MP at the time from Calgary. Okay, and like I said, the party that has the prime minister has to be the party with the most seats in the House of Commons, whether that's a majority or a minority. PM, of course, chooses the cabinet. The people with the responsibility for different so-called government departments, portfolios, they all should belong to that leading political party, and they're usually MPs, though I think from time to time he has or she has chosen someone from the Senate. The usual way the things that work with government is that ideas that eventually become laws. I mean, I guess they initially become bills, come from the cabinet, because without the support of the prime minister and the cabinet, there'd be very little chance that those bills would ever pass. So here are just some examples of cabinet positions. There's usually about 30 of these positions chosen by the prime minister. You have the minister of finance, labor, agriculture, etc. Under each of these cabinet positions, you have the infrastructure, the civil service. Okay, these people are not elected; they're usually appointed and stay in that position indefinitely, depending on what the Minister of Finance or Labor, etc., wants. All right. The legislative branch. We're moving to the legislative branch. You have the House of Commons and you have the Senate. Once again, the House of Commons is green, the Senate is red. House of Commons makes up 338 members, whereas the Senate is 105. The combination of the two now makes up Parliament. By the way, these guys are elected, these guys are appointed. All right, House of Commons, major lawmaking body in Canadian federal political system. The members of Parliament debate, study, and vote on bills. They represent voters in one riding or constituency. Like I said, 338 of them. All MPs, unless they've been kicked out of their parties, belong to political parties. Sometimes MPs can serve as independents, but it's very difficult to get elected as an independent because you do not have the support of a party behind you, their funding, their name, their recognition, etc. The party with the most seats forms the government. Others form opposition. So this is probably from about 2011. The Conservatives at the time were the majority government. As you can see, they have more than half. The NDP at the time was the opposition. The Liberals were the third party. The Bloc Québécois was the fourth party, and you had one Green at the time, Elizabeth May. Okay, the Prime Minister would be seated right smack dab in the middle. Okay, his cabinet would sit right next to him. Immediately across the aisle, you have the leader of the opposition, and then the so-called shadow cabinet. All right, you have the legislative branch, House of Commons. These two quotes talk about the role of the MP. So let's just look at the first quote here to the left. An MP has many roles, being a legislature, being a voice for your constituents. Working on behalf of my constituents takes up most of my time. As a First Nations MP, a key responsibility is to make sure the legislation addresses the issues of Aboriginal communities out there. So, according to this quote, the role of an MP is to be the representative of the constituents that voted him in. Okay, so let's look on the quote on the right. The first responsibility to the constituents who elected the MP, um, the first responsibility is to constituents who elected the MP. The MP represents them in formulating policies and by assisting them with services provided by the Government of Canada. An MP's second responsibility. So obviously, the first responsibility is to represent the people that vote you in. The second responsibility is to the work of Parliament. Whether you are in government or opposition, you have an important role to perform. All right, let's look at the other section of the legislative branch, and that is the Senate. The Senate, they are not elected, they are appointed by the Prime Minister. And senators represent the interests and rights of Canada's regions and Canada's minority groups. This here is a map of the makeup of the number of senators throughout Canada. As you can see, it depends on region. Ontario has 24, Quebec has 24, the West has 24. The Atlantic, for some reason, has 30. Okay. Um, and then the territories have 3. So the total number is 105. Okay, I haven't looked it up, but my best guess is this: that when they divided them up at the time, they gave 24 to the West, 24 to Ontario, 24 to Quebec, and then 24 to the Atlantic provinces. Newfoundland came in late in the game in 1949, so they gave them 6, and then the territories got 3. But I am not sure. I would have to look that up. But anyhow, the Senate, once again, is not elected. They're appointed. They have a different mandate than the House of Commons. But yes, they still need the Senate's approval in order to have bills go through Parliament to ultimately be passed, become a law. All right. Um, I'm not really going to do this right now, but one of the biggest jobs as far as the Senate is that they are a sober second thought. The Senate cannot, or they can propose laws, but they cannot propose a law that has to deal with money bills. It cannot be a law that creates or spends tax money. The Senate considers laws proposed by the House of Commons. So once again, and we'll talk about how a bill passes through the House of Commons and Senate a little bit later in this chapter, but they give it a sober second thought. The term sober just means that once it goes through the House of Commons, it can go through the Senate. The Senate doesn't have to worry about getting elected all the time. They can kind of be a little more deliberate on what gets passed through. All right. Gives it a sober second thought and can reject laws proposed by the House of Commons, but I may add it rarely does. All right. Here's a couple more quotes about the role of senators. First one, my job is to represent my region and to protect the interests of minority groups in Canada. The Senate makes sure that all voices are heard on the issues. We give a voice to citizens who may not have a voice. We bring a balance. We take our job very seriously. So, in many ways, the job of a senator is to represent the minority groups of Canada. Second quote, my role as a senator is much different than any other senator before me. I am the national chairman of a committee that wants to change the Senate to make it elected with equal representation from the provinces. Many say the Senate is illegitimate and ineffective. The changes we propose would make it highly respectful and useful. Um, there was a there was a lot of talk about 25 years ago that the Senate, instead of being appointed, needed to be elected and needed to be equal. Um, as we notice, and as you guys are starting to notice more and more, things take time to change in our country. there hasn't been any real meaningful change in the makeup of the Senate, even since they've been talking about this whole idea of an elected Senate, more like what they have in the United States. So as of now, there hasn't been any real change. The Senate is still appointed. The Senate still represents the interests of regions in Canada, uh, etc. All right, which leads to our assignment, the so-called political party assignment, aka the scavenger hunt. So let's have a look at this. So I'm going to close this off for a second and I'm going to explain this assignment to you. So you will go into Classroom. I'm just clicking on it here real quick. So it's scheduled to be released tonight. You will click on the PDF. All right. So you have a link that you'll look at here in a minute, and I'll get to that in a second. It says use the internet and go to the following site to answer the following questions. All right. So you will go onto that site and answer this first question: how many political parties registered for the 2019 election? Count them and then list them. And so, yes, there's a little bit of work there. So, yes, you'll go onto that site. All right, so you're on the site. Of course, you select English. You go into political participants. Okay, you go where it says list of political parties. I mean, I guess you can do it there, or you can do it there. It doesn't really matter. So you click onto that. And so now you have registered political parties. You'll count them and then you'll write them out. All right, so there's that. Let's go back to this. You got that. And then it says task 2, research your political parties. It says select 4 political parties to explore more in depth. A minimum of 2 choices must be from the following 5. So 2 of the 4 have to be from these 5 right here. Okay. Maybe you'll do conservative or liberal. Maybe you'll do green, NDP. Doesn't really matter. You have to pick 2 from there. Okay. So you'll go into this and you'll look up Conservative Party of Canada. Um, so you have party name, leader. Okay, so you have party name, you got leader. Okay, year registered. You'll find the year registered right here, 2003. Platform and values. Now, in order to find the platform and values, you'll have to do a little bit of a search on the respective websites. And you'll have to look around. Okay, sometimes you can look at About Us, governing documents, and sometimes they're a little bit hard to figure out, but I mean, you can do a little bit of a search. Our Constitution, read through some of this. Principles, that might be some of their platforms. Platformers is what they stand for. Okay, so principles, so take a few of those out of there, etc. I mean, this is just your time to kind of do a little search, figuring it out. You know, if worst comes to worst, you can always go to Wikipedia and you could look up Conservative Party of Canada. And you could do this for any example. All right, so anyways, you could look through that. Um, all right. So like I said, 2 of them have to be from conservative liberal, and then 2 of them have to be from something else, and that's up to you. So, I mean, you could go the Free Party of Canada, the Green Party of Canada. I'd click on marijuana, but I think I'd get blocked here at school. You got the Marxist-Leninist Party. Okay. Once again, you got the leaders, you got the registered date to find a platform and other things. You'd have to go right into the website. See if they let me into the Marxist-Leninist Party here. absolutely, um, and look for some of the things that they would stand for. Okay. Anyways, there's that. All right. So you have, like I said, 4 parties that you can do. Um, a lot of kids like to do the rhinoceros party because they're more nonsensical. But like I said, I think, and oh, by the way, for stats, you can look right here for the stats. It talks about 2019 election results, seats won. So, for example, the Liberals, um, 157 seats. In comparison, in 2015, they won 184. Conservatives won 121 seats, whereas last time they won 99. You'll see that stat right there. Okay. And then it says percentage of popular vote. You'll look at right here, right there. That's the percentage. So liberals got 33%, conservatives 34%, New Democrats 15%, etc. You'll see that stat right there. I think that's it. So yes, you'll be working on this. That is what is primarily your responsibility this week, plus working on your chapter 1 assignment. Um, I'll come with another section of the chapter 1 assignment later on this week into next week, and that will be culminated by the monarchy writing assignment. But until then, I will be available Wednesday if you want some questions. I mean, I'm always available for questions if you want to fire me off an email or come see me here at the school. But I will do some sort of Google Meet session on Wednesday for those that are interested. All right. Until then, take care, and I'll see you when I see you.